Good evening and welcome. Tonight, you're going to enjoy 4 for Success. 4 professional coaches speaking on a variety of topics pertaining to achievement, success, and motivation. My name is Douglas Arnold. Myself, my coaches, we're all members of ICF, International Coach Federation, which is the industry standard for professional coaches. Tonight, you're going to see a variety of amazing, inspiring, energetic stories, words, and thoughts. As a coach, I would like to ask you each to do 3 things. First, I'd like you to be an active listener. I'd like you to really concentrate on the experience of listening to what these coaches bring to you this evening. And to do that, the second request is to be in the moment. Try to divorce yourself from what happened today and yesterday, what you're thinking about for tomorrow or next week or the holidays. Be here. Be now. That'll help with the active listening, and that will make this experience much more richer. And finally, I'd like to ask each of you to come with an open mind. Imagine the possibilities. Consider the opportunities that you may discover tonight and walk away from tonight's presentation. We've got a great lineup of speakers. They're all my friends and colleagues. And tonight's first speaker really brought me into and helped me come along as a professional coach. So you're going to meet some people who are very special to me as well. I'd like to spend a second to thank some people for making tonight's program happen. We have some sponsors who really went above and beyond to make tonight's event a little extra special. And you'll be hearing about some of those things as we go along. Our sponsors this evening are Poorhouse, the wonderful place right next door that we're hoping all of you will join us immediately following the program for a little networking, meeting the coaches, conversation, a little fellowship, and also some drink discounts. I also want to acknowledge the ICF Tampa Bay Charter Chapter. I'm a member. I see some of our members in the audience tonight. This is an outstanding organization, and they saw that the opportunity to introduce people to coaching was really going to be something that we wanted to try to do some outreach and get people to become more aware of what coaching is and what it's not, what it can do. And so ICF also helped underwrite tonight's program. We also received a very generous sponsorship from Craft Tech. Do we have anyone from Craft Tech here tonight? Yay, Craft Tech people. Thank you so much for your support. I also want to thank the wonderful people at Stageworks. How many have never been to Stageworks? This is the first time. What do you think? Is this not an amazing facility? And so we're very excited. Miriam and Carla are working backstage at the front of the house to make everything happen for us. All of our proceeds tonight go to Stageworks, their educational programs. So we're not taking any money home. We're here to help support Stageworks and make this really an educational opportunity for all of you. I also want to thank the fine people who are off with all these tripods. That's Rob and his crew from Ice Code Productions. They're making the video tonight, and that's deeply appreciated. And Steve Weissel, where's Steve? Steve was there you are. I have to apologize. I got these glasses yesterday. All I see is darkness. So I apologize already if I'm looking off into the night. I also want to thank Marjorie Paul, one of the coach's wives, who did all of our graphics and did all of our materials. So there's going to be some housekeeping at the end. We have door prizes, which will be awarded at Poorhouse immediately after. So we really want you all to come over and join us for that. And some of them are quite exciting. And we're going to go ahead and begin our program. So thank you all for coming. and enjoy for success. Our first speaker tonight is Vance Arnett. I first met Vance about a year ago. I was in the process of transitioning from a 35-year career in public relations and marketing. I wanted to become a certified life coach and help people with leadership and creativity and achievement and success in those areas. Vance was extremely helpful to me, guided me to ICF. I asked Vance how long he'd been a coach, and he had to pause and think about that. And Vance said, I think I've been a coach my entire life. As coaches, we assist people in reaching their goals to achieve satisfaction and success. Vance has more than 30 years experience doing that with flair, with style, and an unlimited compassion for everyone he comes into contact with, and you'll see that in just a minute. I've never seen him when his off switch was off. He's always on. He's always on full speed with full energy, and he's like that 24/7. My favorite thing about Vance is his sense of humor. He's very witty, he's very clever, and he weaves that into his coaching and his presentation. Please welcome my friend and coach, Mr. Vance Arnett. Vance?
Wow, who are these people that are so successful all the time? I find them extremely annoying. They always are ready to start something. They're always ready with a new idea. I don't think half of them sleep. They're just always on. They're always charged up. They're always acting like they have the answer when many times they don't. They just don't know how to act without the answer. I got to worrying about that one time when I figured out that I was really annoyed by their success. I mean, all this raising your hand to be first to answer the question, all these late night calls that started off with, I have an idea, or I figured it out. Why wasn't I doing that? Why wasn't I the guy making the calls? It could have had something to do with the fact that I had discovered that I could be the guy that was doing the calls. I hadn't lit my own fire. I've had a lot of chances to light my fire. I had a birthday yesterday. Yay me, I made it. And the best part about my birthday was it was a big one. It wasn't one of those that started with a 0 or a 5. My first big one was when I turned 18. I could drink in the District of Columbia at 18. Unfortunately, it was also the first birthday that I got my first letter from the government, asked me to come down and register for the draft. There's the first hint of how old I am. So I happily registered for the draft. I was in high school. I figured that Vietnam thing would be over with, no problem. My dad looked at me and said, son, you better light a fire under becoming an adult. Because that one's going to have to require some adult decision making. No problem. I made it into college. I graduated, turned 21 3 years later, got another letter, said, you can vote. I know it sounds a little funny to some of you, but back then, when you were 18, you could go get killed for your country, but you couldn't vote, and you couldn't drink. 21 was a big one. The last time I got a letter from the government, not to mention the fact that they told me 2 days after I graduated from college as a report for the draft board that my number had been called. The letter I got yesterday said that I had finally made it to that golden opportunity. I qualified without penalty for Social Security. I was almost as elated as when I got my AARP, my first application for AARP at the tender age of 45. Now let me tell you what that means to me as someone who lit their fire. That's venture capital. My dad used to call Social Security rocking chair money. To me, it's not. It lit another fire under me to expand my business, reach out to more people. So what is it about that process that has changed for me? I was 35 years in government. What is a government guy doing with his fire red all the time? I didn't know any other way to be after I made the transition. And it's an easy transition to do if you understand fire. You saw me like this. I lit it with a lighter that has steel and flint. And if you look carefully, it creates a spark. Spark is the first initial essential thing in fire. It's got to be there. It's the ignition point. It's what sets everything off. Even on spontaneous combustion, there's got to be something there that starts that trigger going, that lights those gases, that feeds off that fuel. There has to be a spark. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. There also has to be fuel. There has to be something there with a combustion rate that will keep it going. And the final thing that has to be there is oxygen, breathing room, space. What I found in talking to these wonderful people that are always on, always moving, always being annoying, always stepping out, you know what I hate the most about them? They don't ever feel ashamed. They get up, they fail, they get up again, they fail, they get up again, they fail. It doesn't even bother them. What is wrong with these people? You know, I was raised to just do it right. You know, it wasn't until I failed about the 15th time that I figured out it was okay to fail. That was the stepping stone to success. You had to be willing to take the risk, step off of the ledge, and see if it floats. Now, some of you out here I know are just those kinds of people. Those are kinds of people because you were wired that way. All of us aren't. For the longest time, I thought I was wired to sit on the couch and watch sports. I was looking forward to a retirement that was not doing nothing by the time I got there. It was my encore career. What was it that I used to spark myself? The first spark can happen with people who set an example. And it's breathtaking how it happens when you see it. But most of us kind of go, oh yeah, and then leave it. We don't ever store it away and put it in our little tinderbox to go back to and say, wait a minute, if he did that. And I'm going to give you an example of one that just touched me on the 11th. I'm a hockey fan. I'm proud of being a hockey fan. I used to smash, slash, and burn anybody that was from Boston. You know, those of you who follow sports, you know, you say Boston, but the Boston fans, how can that be? But unfortunately, Monday afternoon, I saw one of the most legendary players in the game take a hard fall, slide into a net that didn't give as much as his tibia did. And at the height of his playing career this season, headed on an MVP track, Steven Stamkos broke his leg. The Boston house went silent. Nothing except a hush in the crowd. This is a guy from the Lightning. He doesn't play for the Bruins. And for many of you who don't understand Lightning, or don't understand hockey, or don't understand those kinds of things, you always try to make it off the ice under your own power. You don't want to have to be helped. And what did Stamkos do? He stood up, took a few inches, and collapsed. That's a spark. That when you take and you file away and say, the next time I think I'm overcome with something, or I've got bad news, or I can't get my energy going, I will never forget Steven Stamkos. Not the hit, not the fall, but he got up, took 2 steps, and fell down, and then he pounded the ice. He was so frustrated. That's spark. That's the difference. Now, every one of you, if you take a moment, you will think about the experience you've had, the people you've known, the situations that you've seen, and you're going to pick out one spark at least before this night's over. You're going to remember somebody that did something that was so inspiring that it's hard for you to forget. It's hard for you to step back. That's that flint on steel stuff that you can use to ignite your own fire. If Stephen, why not me? Why can't I have that drive, that commitment? He's looking at 4, 5, 6 months off. The difference is, those of us who are hockey fans here know he's going to work as hard as he can to try to get back in 3, or 3.5, or 4. What's the difference? He's wired that way. He wasn't born that talented. He took the natural gift he had and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it and honed it into something. That's the first part of spark. The second part of spark that I use is there are things that just charge me up. They get me going. You know what? You look at a video of a baby laughing, there's no way you can't laugh. I have tried. I can't do it. It's just inspiring. Take that, put it away. Put it in your little tinderbox of motivation. Find somebody that you model and say, oh my gosh, if I just could be like this individual, that's the first part. That's the first part. The striking, getting your fire. What's the second? You know, I talked about fuel. You know, here, it's a candle, it's wax. In our cars, it's the vapor created from gasoline. There's got to be a fuel there to keep it going. Otherwise, it's just the spark and nothing happens. I remember when I was a scout and they made me have to rub the sticks together. I don't know why I had a Zippo from the time I was 8. But no, you got to rub the sticks together. The worst part was finding enough dry stuff to be able to put there so the friction would create it. That's the second human spark, friction. Do something that's outside of your comfort zone. If you find yourself stalled and need to light your fire, do something different. Do something that's not right. Do something that you've never done before. That kind of fuel builds up inside of you so that you have to release. I know that you guys have been so happy you thought you were going to burst. And you've been so excited that you thought you were going to burst. Some of the people I work with are so excited that their head never shuts down. They're constantly thinking. They're constantly planning. But unfortunately, some of that thinking goes toward, oh, what if I fail? What if I do this? What if I do that? You know, the people that Brene Brown talks about when she talks about wholehearted people, those people that use their shame and their testimony and everything else to try to get past those little bumps in life that we all run into, those people don't have that process unless they have an equal or greater amount of, I can do this somewhere inside. We all have that. It's just that we've talked ourselves out. Now, what about oxygen? What about breath? What about being able to make this thing lift? You know, if I blow on it too much, I snuff it. But what happens when a forest fire catches a good upwind or a draft? It spreads. It's all got to be balanced. But how do you get oxygen in your system? First of all, you got to give yourself room for it to be there. All of us walk around with all this stuff that we've piled on the top of us related to what we have to do, what we must do. We make 1,000 lists. You know, I wrote an article not too long ago and put on my blog about totally saturated in the self-help aisle. What the heck do you do when you've leaned in and you've finished the book? I always say take 2 aspirin and call your coach. But there's got to be that next step. There's got to be that next piece of work that's there. You've got to get up off the couch or get out of your office chair, and you've got to take that first step. To be able to do that, you've got to have room to do it. So one of the first things I try to do with myself every morning is clear out all that stuff that doesn't make any difference. Think about what you worried about today, and then think about how much it mattered. Did it really have to burn all that energy for you to be worth it? Or if you took the same amount of energy and said, today, this is what I got to concentrate on. This is what I've got to do. This is what I've got to make happen. That's how you light your fire. You got to have 3. You got room for it. You can't be worried about all the stuff that doesn't matter. Now, coaches have this thing called get rid of your tolerations. We make them make a list of things, and then we ask you exactly the same question I just did. How much of this is really going to make a difference between here and there? And if you boil it down to the 4 or 5 things that are really going to make a difference, you've got all that energy that you would have wasted trying to filter through that stuff, and you can now put it, you know what that is? That's oxygen. That's fuel. You get the right idea, you get to strike that strike, and boom, off it goes. All of a sudden, you got a roaring idea, and you're headed towards success. But be careful. Be careful. You can be too successful. I don't know anybody that has, but that's what everybody tells us. Wait a minute. You in the back, keep your mouth shut. We're sick of hearing from you. How many of you get annoyed when the same person keeps raising their hand in class? Or the same person keeps talking in a meeting? And pretty soon you just disengage. You stop listening to them. It takes a very creative and organically lit person to say, wait a minute, what did you just say? Where were you coming from? Because we're taught, we're raised to discredit. that kind of spontaneous innovation is there. You know, every good, successful person I've worked with has been fired at least 5 times. They've been too crazy to fit in to the old industrial mode. And if you read anything by Seth Godin or some of the new folks that are out there, they're talking brightly. They're talking with energy about people who are not afraid to step off that ledge, move toward the deal, and they don't give a damn what anybody says about it. And you know what? They get down, they get knocked down, and just like that little doll that we used to use as punching bags, they pop right back up. That's what you got to think about. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. The most important thing that you can do tonight before you go to bed is sit down. 1, count your blessings. First of all, you got to come and hear me tonight, and the other 3 are even better. 2, you're going to get a buck off a beer. At least I think that's what you're going to get. I have no idea. Knowing Andy, he probably raised the beer a buck just so it looked at him. He's not 24 and he has his own bar for nothing. The second thing I want you to do is cover what you did, what was successful, what was good about what you did today. Don't, if you got to have it, if you can't close your eyes without running through that tape about what was wrong and what so-and-so said and what was bad about it and what you got to do tomorrow and all that kind of stuff that creates all that head noise that bangs right into your better judgment, your primal judgment, the judgment that allowed you to get to the top of the food chain rather than, you know, it's kind of like you're not the deer in the headlights, you're the one behind the steering wheel. So in that process, I want you to think about all the good things that happened today. All those things you don't ever have to address again. All those things that you don't have to fly over anymore. All that track you don't have to go down anymore. And all those corners you don't have to turn. I promise you, if you just do those 2 things, count your blessings and then count the good stuff that you got done today. In the morning, you can start all over again. I'll give you 15 minutes to worry about all the stuff that's not going to matter, just like you started this morning. Please promise me that you'll do those 2 things, and you'll do them religiously. And one more. We're talking about creating oxygen here. Take 5 really good deep breaths even before you lay down. Get yourself thinking about who you are and where you're at right now. You know, you get up in the morning and you're so worried about what's going on that you fill your head up with stuff. In the evening, all you want to do is go to bed. And presumably, if you don't stay too late at poorhouse tonight, so you can remember going to bed, just do that one thing for me. Take that moment, take 5 deep breaths, and say, you know what? I now know how to light my fire. I got to create a spark. I got to make sure there's some fuel there, and I got to give it room to grow. Thank you very much.
Vance Arnett. I've only been coaching as a certified coach for about 6 months. He was talking about a spark, and I'd like to share with you a little bit about what happened to me and what took me from a 35-year career in advertising and marketing and led me to working with people. One, it's something I felt was authentic to what I wanted, but I didn't discover that until last August, 2012. I had just completed a major merger between 2 very large Florida organizations. It was 2 years in the making, and in the last 3 weeks, we were working 14-hour days, 7 days a week, as is often the case. We completed the merger, and I was about to go on my first 2-week vacation in almost 18 years. We were going to go to a family reunion where my mother-in-law was going to turn 90, and people were coming from all over upstate New York, all over the Midwest, to celebrate with my mother-in-law. We were going to leave on Monday morning. The merger concluded on Thursday. I was home Friday night sending emails to my sons in New York and Chicago, to family members, giving them our travel, alerting all of my wife's family, these are the arrangements, when suddenly as I sat in my chair on my laptop, my left hand froze, and the left-hand side of my face started tingling like a waterfall. I turned to my wife and I said, I think I'm having a stroke. We live about 3 minutes from a hospital. With my hand clenched, my wife quickly bundled me up and drove me to the hospital. And not unlike Vance, I'm kind of a funny guy, and I'm joking the whole way, as men often do with their wives. And I'll give you a quick piece of advice. If you walk into an emergency room and you tell them you think you're having a stroke, you get to go ahead of everybody. I mean everybody. Went into the ER. Within about 90 minutes, the stroke went away on its own, quite miraculously. And they did determine it was, in fact, a stroke. The scar tissues behind my right ear. And so at about 11 o'clock, this was from 6 o'clock till 11 o'clock, and I'm like, I'm fine, I'm going home. And the doc said, no, we found some other things too. We had a major silent heart attack at the same time. And we're in a dilemma because we can't do surgery on someone that's had a stroke. You have to go through medication for about 90 days. And you could die any minute during that period of time because you need a quad bypass. And I'm saying, wait. I've got tickets Monday morning to fly to Syracuse, New York. And he said, you don't understand, Doc. This is my mother-in-law's 90th birthday. Everybody's showing up. And he said, you're not. And he said, if you don't do what we say, you're not going to see your next birthday. So suddenly, all of your priorities in life start spiraling. Your career, you're looking at your wife who is not thinking about her mother's 90th birthday anymore. And you realize just how displaced some of your personal priorities are. Very long story shortened. 90 days passed. I took care of myself as best I could. I had a quad bypass on August 23rd, 2012. Had the surgery on a Thursday. I was home cooking dinner on Monday night. I was extremely lucky. I was blessed. But I also had a tremendous amount of time to think about what my personal priorities were. And I decided that I didn't want to do what I grew up to be. And a very good friend of mine, who I counseled 22 years ago, and I spent quite a bit of time on the phone, and she said, you know, now that you're trying to think about what you're going to do with your life, do you realize that on such and such a date back in like 1985, you told me I should look at something other than public relations. Not because she wasn't good at it, because she wasn't authentically and genuinely content. And I asked her at that time, not realizing that I was coaching, what do you want to do? She said, I want to be a dog writer. Now, we worked at a botanical garden. There were no dogs at the botanical garden. And I said, you need to become a dog writer. I left that position about a year later, and she left immediately thereafter. Moved to New York, joined a small organization called AOL, and became the first online dog writer ever, only to write 7 books about dogs, become an editor at Dog World, and fulfilled her life passion. And her boss told her to do that. Kind of weird. Point is this. She said, you would make a great coach. Learn how to become a coach. And this is something that you are professionally accredited at doing. And the people you meet tonight are professionals at this. I'm still a novice, but I'm learning from all of these people. The spark that Vance talked about happened to me last year, and I feel redemption. My wife said, you're a totally new person. Vance mentioned the term encore career. We talked about this back in February. Vance did some coaching with me, and it really set me moving forward. So the people and the opportunities you hear about tonight are authentic, they're genuine, And they can make a difference if you open yourself to possibilities. So, with that, I would like to introduce you to another friend of mine. Laura Scott is the president of 180 Coaching. She's a professional life and leadership coach, an author, and a speaker, and she's currently our director at the ICF Tampa Bay Charter Chapter. Laura mindfully utilized the amazing power of choice to relocate from Canada to Tampa, and I think that that's more serious than having a stroke. She did this via Virginia, and she continues to consciously choose happiness every day, facilitated by gratitude, humor, mindfulness, and liberal doses of red wine and dark chocolate. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Laura Scott.
I'm going to start out with a question. What is the #1 killer of squirrels? Any idea?
Electric lines.
Electric lines, yes? Anyone else? Cars. Indecision. Thank you. Indecision. You've seen this. There's a little squirrel running across the road. He's going for that tree where he buried those nuts last fall. And that's what squirrels do. They run around, they chase each other, and they chase nuts. They look for nuts. Now, if that sounds like your workplace, that is no coincidence. So, a squirrel is going across the road. He sees this car bellowing down on him. And his little squirrel brain has 3 choices. Freeze, fight, or flight. That's it. That's all his little squirrel brain can muster up. So if he freezes, he knows he can't fight, so he freezes. And if in that moment, he doesn't take the 3rd option, which is flight, bam, he's roadkill. This is why we see so many dead squirrels in the road, because they're operating from what I call the reptilian brain. This is the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that almost all species on the earth share, but unfortunately the squirrel is functioning almost exclusively from this place. So he has 3 choices: fight, flight, or freeze. A really very severe version of what I call this default brain is the rainbow lizard. If a male rainbow lizard goes into the territory of another male rainbow lizard, they actually have 2 default choices. And that is to flee or to fight to the death. 2 choices. So what does this have to do with leadership? Well, unfortunately, it seems that we're seeing a number of people who are functioning in leadership roles that are functioning almost exclusively from this default place, this part of our brain that we call the amygdala. I call it the reptilian brain. They're basically living in the default. So, and this is the majority of people. So really, what's the problem then? I mean, if the majority of people are living from the default, what harm can come from that? Well, let me give you an example. Imagine that your esteemed leader is functioning from this place, and he's functioning from the feelings of fear or anxiety or defensiveness. And he has only 3 options: to freeze, fight, or flight. How comfortable are you? What is the scenario? Let's extend that. This esteemed leader is the solo pilot of the jet you are flying in. How comfortable are you now? This is something that we talk about all the time. I'm a bit of a brain geek, so I spend a lot of time thinking about how the brain works and helping my clients transcend the default. And the reason why, there really are only 3 species that we've studied extensively that have what we call the new brain. It's called the neocortex. It's the part of the brain that is most newly evolved. It's that gray matter that you see when you look at the picture of a brain. You see that sort of wrinkly gray matter. That's the neocortex. It turns out about 76% of brain volume in humans is made up of this neocortex. This is the newer, more evolved, nimbler part of the brain, which is associated with decision-making, higher consciousness, and creativity. It turns out there's only a few species on Earth that have the ability to craft creative responses to stimuli, and that's human beings, dolphins, and African elephants. Those are the ones that we know about and we've studied. So the rest of us are basically operating on the default, on the reptilian brain. And I want to show you how that plays out. I have a very high-tech visual here that I'd like to show you. To give you an idea about what happens when we operate from the default. So what I've got here is I have two response patterns. The first one at the top is called the catabolic response pattern. The one at the bottom is called the anabolic response pattern. And I'll describe what catabolic and anabolic means in just a minute, but I want you to take a look at what these look like. Everything starts with a trigger. Now, in dramatic terms, we're in a theater here, in dramatic terms, you might call this the inciting incident, but I like to call it the trigger. And that's anything that sort of sparks you. It might be something that somebody says or does, it sort of just rubs you the wrong way, and you get into that default, that sort of fearful place, that defensive place, that feeling of being annoyed. That is the trigger. And immediately, in the catabolic response, you go into a default behavior. That's the reptilian brain at work. The anabolic response pattern, same trigger, but there's something different inserted there before the response, and that is what I call the pause point. This is the magic moment. This is the chance where we get to, by virtue of choice, take a moment to pause and craft a creative response to the stimuli. This is the amygdala, this is the neocortex at work. The amygdala doesn't have the ability to pause. It's the squirrel. It's the lizard. It goes immediately into habitual default behavior. And we don't know what the outcome is. Well, if you're a lizard and a male comes into your territory, one lizard dies. If you're a squirrel and you don't flee in that moment, best case scenario, you lose the tail. But more often than not, you're the main course for the turkey vulture that's circling overhead. So the difference, to get yourself into this neocortex place, again, is the trigger. And this comes with awareness. This comes with an intention. Again, going back to the power of choice. When you are aware of where you are, you'll get the trigger. And a person who's aware, a person who knows what their hot buttons are, a person who is aware of the feelings that come up when you're in that default zone, which is generally fear or annoyance, you start to recognize, you go, whoa, 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 there's that trigger, there's that hot button. And there's that fear and that anxiety and that anxiousness and that feeling. And that's your cue to take the pause. The pause point is the point where you decide how you want to show up by choice. And there's a couple ways to do that. I use the acronym ABC. The first strategy, basically, is awareness. Being aware that I have a choice. I'm not a squirrel, I'm a human being. I have a choice about what to do in this pass point. And it's just sort of an awareness of being careful about how you're judging the situation. So a lot of non-judgment. You really want to get into a place of sort of awareness, but not judging it particularly. The second thing, the B, is breath. This is a really easy one, and this is the one I work with my clients a lot with, particularly in highly charged situations, in conflict-ridden situations, where, man, This is what I do, is it's basically a simple breath where you inhale for 4 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you hold it for 2 or 3, 1, 2, and exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That simple breath is a lifesaver. It's going to get you out of the reptilian brain and into the neocortex by virtue of breath. It's really tough for that squirrel default to kick in when you're taking that breath. The other strategy is the C in ABC. It's centering. How many people here have done any martial arts or yoga in the room? How many people have? So you're familiar with centering. Okay, good. Centering is important. A simple change in posture can get your brain out of the default, out of the reptilian brain, into the neocortex, the more creative part of your brain. But sometimes you have to do a physical movement before your brain catches up. So I like to do sort of a mountain pose. A mountain pose in yoga is very, very strong pose. It's feet centered, shoulders back, palms open, head high, breathe. Mountain pose. Now you may not have an opportunity to do all of these 3 things at once. Maybe you have to pick and choose, and that's where that neocortex comes in. You get to be creative about this, how you use the pause point. And it depends on the situation. It's very situational. Certain things will work. For me, what really works best, and this is outside of the ABC acronym, is a question. A question. And that question is, how is my highest self choosing to respond right now? How is my highest self choosing to respond? Or another question you can ask yourself is, am I a human being or a squirrel? Am I a human being or a squirrel? Or another great question is something like, what's going on here? Because what's going on here is a question that gets you out of the thick of things into being an observer of what the situation is. What's happening here? What's going on here? Well, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. I'm feeling a little bit annoyed. And I feel that default response kicking in. But I know I have the power of choice. So what am I going to do? How am my highest self choosing to respond right now? So those are 3 different, very different types of strategies that you can do with the pause point. And the reason why I label this catabolic response pattern and anabolic response pattern is because I'm an energy person. I work with energy leadership. I'm an energy leadership master practitioner. So I speak in terms of energy. And let me describe what catabolic and anabolic means in terms of energy. Catabolic energy is energy that harms or hurts or is negative or demotivates. Anabolic energy is energy that is positive, that heals, that empowers. And you've seen this. You know this energy. You know the difference. Let me give you an example. Here's catabolic energy. This is anabolic energy. So, you know the difference. You can feel it. You've got people in the room anywhere you go. You go to the grocery store, you go to your office, you go anywhere. In a meeting, you're going to see the anabolic people and you're going to see the catabolic people. There's actually an energy leadership index, an assessment that you can take that shows you typically how you show up. Are you anabolic typically, or are you catabolic? And that's helpful. But the reality is that you're never 100% catabolic or anabolic at any given time. It usually happens where you're a little bit anabolic sometime during the day and a little bit of catabolic the other time. But the awareness is important. And what basically allows you to do is basically choose how you want to show up. The way to shift from catabolic energy to anabolic energy is to be in that awareness space and to be able to use that pause point effectively in your life. It's really interesting. We've learned so much about the brain it's amazing. The brain is the most amazing tool, amazing computer, amazing machine ever invented. I don't know, who can we give it credit to? God, the universe, whatever. It's an amazing thing. But the curious thing about the brain is nobody has yet to find the specific point in the brain that makes decisions for us. We are the decision maker. There's no, the brain facilitates decision making. The brain allows us to weigh options. The brain gives us, lets us process information, but our brain does not make the decisions for us. We are the decision maker. I came across a really interesting book this year, written by Greg Kuhn, who is a educator and a futurist. It's titled, Why Quantum Physicists Do Not Fail. And it's a lot about quantum physics, but really what I love about this book is it reminds us that the real you is not your brain. And I'm going to quote a little bit about from this book. He says, modern science has yet to find any part of your brain where decisions are made, only where they are carried out. Yet there is no doubt that there exists a you who is making decisions for your brain and the rest of your body to execute. This means that the real you, the you that decides, is a non-physical energy. Call this energy what you will, God, spirit, universe, whatever, the quantum field. The real you is non-physical, and that is becoming more difficult to deny. I have another word for this energy. I call it mind. I imagine that mind is separate from the brain, and mind has the perception of options. And mind has the ability to basically craft any number of responses, creative responses to a trigger. And the great thing about that is you can choose. You have the power to choose how you show up. We are the masters of our brain, not the other way around. We are the mastermind. So I want to remind you today and every day that in every day and every moment, you have the ability to craft a creative response to stimuli. And every day and every moment, you get to choose how you want to show up. That's an incredibly powerful point of power, is that realization. So the next time when somebody really pisses you off, you can go into the squirrel mode, you can go into the reptile mode, or you can let your higher self choose how you want to show up. And the wonderful thing is you get to choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Fantastic. She mentioned that we don't know where decisions come from, but I had a boss once that sat on where his decisions came from. So, I was thinking about that a lot. In coaching, there are a lot of niches. Coaches often specialize in specific areas of study and coaching. You might be a leadership coach and help an individual achieve more with their own personal desires to accomplish more, perhaps in business, perhaps in politics, community, nonprofits. We have divorce coaches. We have one of the leading divorce coaches in Tampa here today, Peggy, wave, one of our friends. We have people that do a variety of coaching that specialize in working with conflict management, creativity. There's just all types, health and wellness. So coaching isn't always a very broad, it can be a very narrow specialty as well. And the next speaker is a very profound coach in helping people who are working with issues for their business, entrepreneurs, corporations. looking at a variety of ways of bringing the right priorities to the table, discussing conflict, resolving conflict, and achieving goals, sometimes very significant goals that can be millions of dollars or thousands of jobs. Indraneel loves the challenge of building successful businesses. He has spent a career assembling high-energy teams and helping them build great companies. We work with individuals, and often we work with teams. So it's not just a one-on-one, it can be multiple, it can be a variety of individuals in a variety of settings. Coaching is how Indra likes to lead. He is now busy coaching entrepreneurs throughout the Tampa region and throughout the United States and the world, and investors are often turning to him to reach their objectives in a harmonious manner. Ladies and gentlemen, Indraneel.
Thank you, Doug. I gotta be sorry. Good evening, everybody. I'm here to talk about managing in tough times. When I wrote the title and decided to talk about it, it's a wide enough subject you can drive a bus through it. So let's start with talking about what is tough times. And in the business sense, tough times mean different things at different times. A few years back, when the economy started to go south and eventually the bottom fell out, it was tough times all around for most businesses. Sometimes tough times are driven by market realities, competition. You perhaps have a new competitor who is trying to buy market share, and you have to deal with it, and your profits are starting to shrink. Sometimes tough times are created by not having a sharp enough business plan and pushing ahead without validating them, especially in the early days of the business. So tough times mean different things in different types of business or different life cycles of a business. So what I'm going to do today is talk about some of the tricks that help get through tough times. At one point in my career, I used to run a business that produced all the security materials that go into ID cards and passports issued by governments. So when the recession came, I was sitting there, fat up and happy, going, this is a recession-proof business. You still need driver's licenses, you need ID cards. So where's my business is not going to get hurt? You still have to issue these documents. I had a colleague who ran the commercial side of the business that dealt with anti-counterfeiting and brand protection, and he was hurting real bad. Well, little did I know what the reality turned out to be. Governments are actually smarter than you think they are. Even though they need to issue driver's licenses, let's take that as an example. What they decided to do was, they decided to squeeze their vendors and say, I'm going to extend your contract. I'm not going to go out to a new bid or do any of those crazy things through these tough times, but you're going to have to give me upgrades at the same price. So essentially, my costs went up to protect the business because I didn't want to lose market share. And suddenly, I had to deal with a very different business reality. I wasn't prepared for that. So the recession-proof business that I thought was going to just kind of chug along through the recession didn't. Suddenly I had to deal with having the same revenue, but much higher costs. I had to scramble to figure out how to deal with it because my boss wanted essentially a certain amount of cash at the end of each quarter, and I had to deliver that. So what the lesson here is, I don't think in today's real business world there is any good times left anymore. Every minute when you think you're managing or running a business in the good times, you're falling behind. Somebody else is gaining growth on you. You have to run a business as if you're in tough times all the time. And if you have that mindset, it will help you get through a lot of craziness and prepare better. You'll be much more agile when you actually hit turbulence. Some of my colleagues argue with me and say that, well, you never have any downtime, you never have time to retool or give people rest. The simple answer is you don't anymore. So you've got to focus on actually preparing to fight and deal with all the things that you need to do to manage in tough times. What's the first thing you need to do when you manage in tough times? What are you forced to do? You're forced to focus, you're forced to think differently. Because what you want to do is survive. That's the first instinct that kicks in. You have to survive. And so to survive, you have to think differently, and that leads to simplicity. You have to make things really simple, do a few things, and execute them flawlessly. If you don't, the rest doesn't matter. And so in business, thinking simply is tough. We have been taught in a business culture and in the business world, especially those of us who've lived in the corporate world for years, that you make a long list of your goals and you set the most important ones, the top few, and then the next set, and then the next set. The different thinking, the challenge you face in tough times is you're very likely allowed one goal. And that's what forces you to think differently. There's a very interesting book written by a fellow called Ken Siegel. Ken used to be the creative director at the ad agency that worked for Steve Jobs at Next and then at Apple, when Steve came back to Apple. The book is not, there are many books that talk about how good or how crazy or how much of a terror Steve Jobs was. This is Ken's story about his interactions with Steve and with Apple. The book's called Insanely Simple, the passion that fuels success at Apple. Okay, so in this book, what you see is how different interactions Ken had with Steve was from interactions he had with Dell, with IBM, with Intel. He even worked with Nike for a while as their creative director. It's a good read. It's a very thin book. It's an easy read. If you haven't read it, please do. I encourage you to read it because it talks a lot. There's some fun, through the fun that in his interactions, there's some neat lessons to be learned. You'll have a few aha moments as you read this book. Human beings are a funny lot. We're kind of funny. If you catch somebody and discuss one idea with them, they'll nod their head. If you catch them and talk about 5 ideas, they're going to scratch their head and very likely forget all 5. That's how we are wired. This leads you to the focus of simple one focus, a very simple focus. In Ken Siegel's book, he talks about the simple stick. The simple stick is what euphemistically Apple employees call the weapon that Steve Jobs wielded. And it would show up in meetings almost unpredictably, and it was a violent tirade. But when you triggered his angst, his ire, because you hadn't simplified it, you got beat by the simple stick. And it happened pretty regularly. Read the book. I won't spoil your thought about it. But what they did was built a DNA where they asked themselves, am I going to get beat by the simple stick before they went into a meeting? Okay, so they were prepared for that. Simplifying stuff leads to focus. These two words, simple and focus, are kind of tied together. Simplifying things gives you focus. If you focus, amazingly, things become quite simple. So getting the focus right and completely getting to the core of what you want to accomplish is It's perhaps the most important thing you're going to do ever in running a business. If you can't tell it, you hear a lot about 30-second elevator speeches. It needs to be a 5-second elevator speech. If you can't express what you want to do in 5 to 10 seconds, you're very likely you're trying to do too much. And it's just the way it is. Early in my career, I failed at simplicity and focus. I started my career as a research engineer at the labs. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. The best research lab in the world at that time. I could do anything I wanted. There were 32,000 of us in the labs at that time. Half of us had doctorates. And the amazing thing was, you only used first names and everybody was a peer. People whose books I had read didn't demand respect. We were colleagues. We could ask each other questions and collaborate with each other. Here's my lack of focus. I was finishing up my doctorate, and I presented an amazing paper at a conference, and the guys at the labs hired me before I finished. They said, come on over, work, finish from here. You're almost done, you're going to just have to write. Well, I got involved with so many interesting things in the labs. I never finished. 3 years, 60 credits beyond my master's later, I still don't have a doctorate. I lost my focus. Obviously, it was important to me because otherwise I should have left after my master's and gone on to work. I didn't. But I got excited about all kinds of things. And if you look at me as a corporation, I failed to focus. I failed to accomplish a pretty important goal. The only man who beat me with the simple stick was my dad. And forever going, you need to finish. What's the matter with you? For about 25 years, I carried I did some work on very esoteric image modeling stuff. Really bad math. And I carried around all my papers in a box for about 25 years. Finally, my wife said, you need to let it go, because you're never going to finish it. And so it's done now. So that part is done, but I personally learned to focus from that. Another personal story. After leaving the labs, I went on to run that's my first general management job. I ran a division at Tektronix, a large electronic corporation in Northern California. And they had built this company. This division was started by their chief technology officer. They had some neat new technology, which they were trying to turn into products, and they did, but they couldn't make any money. And you don't run a business that doesn't make money. At that point, as an old boss used to say, it's a hobby, it's not a business. And so I was hired to come in and see if I could fix the problem. And having a research background, they thought perhaps I could really figure it out. Well, it was an interesting challenge because I walked in and here was a division where most of the people were engineers and they'd been having fun for a long time. And they were absolutely flabbergasted that I took 2/3 of the products and the project off the table. They said, no, we're going to do 3 things, and we're going to do it really well. Let's go find out from the customers which 3 things we're going to do. And it really bothered me. They never expected this guy from the labs, this research guy, to come in and do this. Well, guess what? In 2 years, we were profitable, and the business did just here again, we had to simplify from 15, 20 products to 3 products, make it well, and figure out what customers really want. So, read insanely simple. Simplify your goals. Simplify as you start to sit down and stare at your goals and simplify them, you'll find it's harder than it looks, than it is. And if it's not that hard, you very likely haven't thought carefully enough about it. The next element of managing in tough times is the customer. You have got to have a passion for the customer. Every time I've worked in large corporations and we've hit the rocks, the first thing the CFO says, cut discretionary expenses, cut travel. And you go, no, that's the dumbest thing you can do because you're not going to go talk to the customer. talking to the customer is perhaps the most important thing you can do at any time, especially in tough times, because you need the customer, you exist for the customer, and they kind of pay attention to who's still coming around in tough times, because everybody else has got their traffic budget. They don't do conference calls, they don't show up. Customers will tell you how to focus, what to focus on, simplifying your life. They may not know what product they need. You may be building a game changer, but if you listen carefully, you'll get a sense for how you're going to change their life, because that's what you want to accomplish at the end of the day. And customers can be incredibly forgiving if you service the heck out of them. Again, a little personal story. A few years back, I used to be part of a little startup company that did an IPO and raised a boatload of money. This was in the glory days of the internet. We tried to raise 20 million, we raised 82, and we finally said no more. We don't want to take any more money. Please stop. Because we don't know what to do with it. And unlike most of our peer companies, we didn't burn it on nice marketing, fancy offices, all that good stuff. We saved it in the bank. So a bunch of us old brick and mortar guys, we kind of knew not to do things like that. And when the bubble burst, we still had 62 million in the bank, which was amazing, given our peer group and where they stood. So we went and spent a chunk of that money buying a piece of Polaroid, which was in bankruptcy at that time. And it was a good strategic fit because we could apply our technology in their product lines very quickly. So we had this opportunity, but boy did I get in trouble. I got to go around this division of Polaroid, so I moved to Boston. This business was a Polaroid business that produced driver's licenses. Okay? By the time I left, we had exceeded over 80% of market share. It was a big part of the business. Started off with Polaroid pictures and then grew to digital. I had a customer in Maine, the state of Maine. Their Secretary of State wrote us a letter saying that they had been lied to so badly by the previous Polaroid administration, they would not meet with anybody from the previous management team ever again. And if we set foot in the state, they may actually arrest us. I actually still have that written letter. I've never seen a letter like that from the government. Official threatening a whole company and saying clearly that you lied on these instances. But here's the bottom line. I hiked up to Augusta, Maine, which is quite a ways from Boston, to do that every month. Met with them, listened to them, let them vent, but more than anything, serviced them to the point where they extended my contract. They gave us good references, and they were eventually one of our best supporters. Here's an example of where, if you take the time to go sit and listen to the customer. Maine had a unique geography. Big state, very sparse population. Driver's licenses, you don't have lots of offices, so you've got to service them differently. And nobody ever took care of that. That was the problem. So if you sat and listened to them and figured out what they needed, you solved them. And guess what? It's very useful in lots of states. In the mountain states in the north, in Wisconsin, places like that. So we solved a problem, built a model, and the customer told us what to do. The third element of managing in tough times is your core team. You're not going to be able to manage yourself. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to need a partner or a couple of partners. If you're running a business, you're going to need a core team. Again, our corporate background, we've been taught for years to hire people in a certain way. We write a job description. We match the requirements, the background, and the job description to the best people. We interview them, we hire them. That's what we've been taught. That's the right way to hire. HR people will do that day after day. Here's the problem. You're not sure you're getting the right person. Hiring is changing. You want, and there is a school of thought that now says you hire for attitude. What the heck is that, hire for attitude? We give you an example. Southwest Airlines. One of their core values, the simplification, is to have fun. with their customers. If you've flown Southwest and you've listened to some of their announcements, they're fun, they're interesting, and they encourage that. But you didn't know they kind of asked their pilots to do the same thing as well. There's now a lot of literature that talks about brown pants. You have to hire your brown pants. And let me explain what brown pants mean. Actually, brown shorts. Southwest was doing an interview for pilots, and typical pilot profile, mid-30s, dark suit, shiny polished shoes, black socks, very, very formal, very serious, mostly male class. Okay? So we got in this room, and the HR person said, I know you guys are very well dressed and set up and outfitted for this interview, but we're going to do something a little different. We want you to be comfortable. We want you guys to take off your dress slacks and put on these brown shorts that I have. Now, I'm sure 3/4 of the people who were in the interview room went, find some other job to act like an idiot. But that was Southwest's way of checking to see who was comfortable in a very different environment. That was their way of hiring for attitude. That's how they filtered, and they still do that. So hence, you want to find your brown pants. You want to find the people who will fit, who have an attitude. And there's one other thing, and this is strange, but it's true. You want to find people you can coach. If you find the right people with attitude, you're going to need to teach them your business, and you need to coach them. For that, you need people who will take coaching. A lot of people don't. There's no tests to measure coachability index. God knows what they'll come up with next. But you want to hire a team, a core team that has an attitude and that will go to the mat for you every day. Because you don't take a break. You're managing as if you're at war every day. There is no break. Attrition will happen. If you have a very tight team, other people will pick up the slack while you replenish people into the team, bring new people into the team. So hiring the right team and empowering them is something that you absolutely have to do. You can't do it yourself. Lots of CEOs try, lots of entrepreneurs try. You need a team to go work. You can't do it yourself. And if you try to do everybody's job, you're going to fail. You don't need to. I'll finish up with, my friend Doug's telling me I'm running out of time. I'm going to finish up with a little story again about myself and an experience I had which kind of pulls it all together. Remember I talked about when I started this company that I ran, this division of the business that I ran, which did government work, passports, ID cards. The recession-proof business that really wasn't recession-proof. When I finally realized mine wasn't recession-proof, and my colleague's business definitely wasn't recession-proof, we had to sit down with our CEO and go, we're screwed. We have a problem. Because I can't hold up the rest of the company. I got problems of my own. And after a lot of soul searching, we came up with two logical options. The first one, which is what everybody does, go lay off people. In that business, and in any business, hiring people, committed people, good people who will stay with the company is difficult at any time. In hard times, it's more difficult, and all the effort put into training that walks out the door. And when the economy comes back, you have to do that investment all over again. You can't crank up and get ahead of your competition because you're not ready. So we came up with a really crazy idea. Three of us, we sat down and said, okay, let's try this. The management team is going, instead of laying off people, the management team is going to take a pay cut, a pretty significant one. And the higher up you are, the more you make, the bigger your pay cut. But that's, again, conventional sense. People do that all the time. We did something a little different. We went back to the board and said, we'll do this, but you have to create a program where if you meet specific objectives, you will not only give us our money back, we actually make more back. We're investing in the company. And in tough times, the only measure that matters is cash. We were managing to cash. So everybody was tied, instead of lots of metrics and measurements, it was tied to cash management. The whole company was measured in cash. And amazing, we made this a voluntary program. amazingly, every last management team member bought into it. Lots of consultations from spouses. I know my wife had lots of questions. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Kind of stuff. How are you going to do these things? But I'll tell you something. At the end of the year, as the recession was winding down, we beat every measure in that plan. And we gave back 3 times the money people put at risk. And it was fun to watch these guys, a manufacturing engineer stepping up and telling a sales guy, I'll go with you on a sales call. Let's close this deal. Amazing thing. Everybody was focused on saving a buck. That was cash management. Amazing things happen when you have good people with attitude, you empower them, and you have a simple focus. Magic can happen. That's all
I'm Thank you, Indra. I really value the idea of simplicity and being personable. I think that that's another good trait of a professional coach, really getting down to the simplicity of the importance of the relevant and achievable goals that you need and want in your life. Our next speaker is going to talk about meaningfulness. And I think that you're going to find this is our closer that is the big close for the evening. Vera is a delight, and I think that this is, of the 4, this is the one that most people are going to take, I think, to heart, because she really is going to focus on what you as an individual can find from coaching. Vera, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Vera, she can hear me. Vera Polyakova is an energetic and enthusiastic member of the ICF Tampa Bay leadership team. Vera's coaching practice is built around her own unique model called the MER model. Her passion is to help others, especially students and young people, create meaningful, inviting, interactive, and reinforcing lives. She has her master's degree in industrial organizational psychology. Please welcome Vera Polyakova on being meaningful. Vera.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. So, good evening again. I'm a little nervous about being up here. Talk about lighting your own fire, right? And the reason for that is I'm a little apprehensive about candles. And the reason why I'm apprehensive about candles is the last time I was on stage was at the Improv for the Tampa Technology Forum, presenting on user experience and usability, and I literally lit my own fire by lighting my hair on a candle before I got on stage. But luckily for me, I have long enough hair to keep me going, so I'm going to put these away for now and out of her way. And I know you're excited to see what's behind here, but I'm not going to show you yet. So this is a familiar setting for me because I have a master's degree in psychology, and a lot of people ask me if I have a couch in my office, but I don't. They didn't want to put that there because they wanted me to sit at a desk and actually be productive, but I don't take clients on the couch. So what is it to be meaningful? What does that mean? At some point in our life, after we learn how to walk and speak and talk, and we can process some thoughts, we start creating dreams. We start thinking about the things that we want to achieve. We start creating plans. We start, being ambitious, and we create the big plans of things that we want to do with our life. In summer, I want to become a firefighter. I want to become a nurse, or anything about I want to climb Mount Everest. I want to move to South Africa and hang out with animals. We become a little ambitious, and there's no sky's the limit, right? But something holds us back. We get a little older, we start going to school, we get a job, and for some reason those ambitious goals that we had and those dreams, they may not happen. And what I think it is the fact that I think we are afraid and we fear the unknown. So there's a lot of unknowns in making choices and going through life and doing things. And I feel that I myself included, we're fearful of the unknown. And when we're fearful of the unknown, what happens is we start limiting our experiences. We miss out on opportunities. We miss out on meaningful experiences. And experiences are important because they build our life. They build who we are. Experiences are what create meaning in our life. And experiences guide, what eventually becomes our passion, or what we define our purpose to be. And maybe we want to start a startup or an entrepreneur, or we want to become an entrepreneur and be innovative. Experiences all lead to that. And you find meaning by doing. You don't find meaning by sitting back. So what being meaningful means, it means moving forward. It means taking risks and seeking opportunities. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll start with the first story, and that is in summer 2010, my aunt called me, and I was sitting on my desk. I was an office manager, and I took the call, and she asks me, "Hey, do you want to go to South Africa for 3 weeks?" And the normal people would be like, "Yeah, I'm going, sign me up." And the not so much of a risk taker of me, I said, "Wow, that sounds really cool. I'm going to have to ask my manager if I can take off, and I'll get back to you." And my aunt just laughed at me. She thought it was a joke. She's like, "Are you kidding me?" She's like, "You're going." So I asked my manager, and it turns out my manager laughed at me as well. I guess I shouldn't have been even wondering about those things and should have just left my job. But we went to South Africa. We actually traveled to Johannesburg first, and we spent some time traveling, riding around in the open jeeps and looking at animals, being this far away from elephants and tigers. And my favorite part is hugging lions and baby tigers. And I have a huge poster printed out in my house of me hugging a little cub. If that wasn't scary enough, after that we went to Zambia. And in Zambia, there's this beautiful waterfall. It's called Victoria Falls. And Victoria Falls there's a bridge that connects between Zambia and Zimbabwe, and the Victoria Falls runs in the middle. And on this bridge, there's bungee jumping. So my aunt asked, "Are you going to go bungee jumping with me?" And I said, "I don't know, I'll do it if you do it." And she said, "Well, of course I'll do it with you. We're here to do everything together." So we go to the bungee jumping area on that bridge, and one of the scariest part was actually leaving the hotel grounds. We were in Zambia, which means we had to walk on foot and cross into Zimbabwe to get to that bridge, and walk next to baboons next to us, which if you've never walked next to a baboon, is terrifying because those monkeys are crazy. They will rip your face off. It's not even funny. So these monkeys are walking next to us. We walk out onto that bridge, and there's people there gathered. And most of the people there are watchers. They're observers. Not many of them are taking the dive off of this bridge to do the bungee jumping. And there's 2 different bungee jumping, and I'll show you images of both of them. And so we're standing there, and you see this fence, and it just has these ropes hanging on it. And there's people running around doing their job. And so they asked us if we wanted to do it, and we committed. We said, yes, we'll do the bungee jumping. And we bought all of there's 3 types that you can do. We bought each one. Let's just get it over with and do all. And I think there was a deal, like you buy 3, get 1. You buy 3, get 1 free because you might not finish all 3, right? So we did all 3. We get there, and for the first jump, what they actually want you to do is, my aunt and I were doing it together, so we're doing a tandem. So what they do is they put you together next to each other, and they take towels and wrap them around your ankles individually first. And you're wondering probably, why are they wrapping towels around your ankles? And my theory is because that's where they wrap the rope, and so your ankles don't snap when you're actually flying down and bouncing up and down. So they tied our feet in towels, and then they tied our feet together. So we're standing next to each other, both of our feet are in towels. You can't really move, so you're just walking like this around. We have the harness on, and for this particular jump, what they do is they tie the bungee cord around your feet, because you're gonna jump out head first, like a bird, and you're gonna fly. And so the craziest part of this jump is this: there's instructions. You can't just go up there and they count to 3 and you jump off and you'll be all good. The problem is especially if you're going tandem, is they're going to count off to 3, right? And at 2, you have to bend your legs. So you have to hold one of your arms up and you're hugging your other person. And then you have to bend your legs on 2, and on 3, just spring out, and you have to keep your arm out and be as still as possible. And this is important for many reasons, because if your partner doesn't do it with you on time, one of you is going to fall first and going to grab the other person, which makes you swirl out of control. And it's going to hurt. So a person that went right before us did just that. He went by himself, but he decided he was going to dive for it. He dived in it, and he's a risk taker. And I'm sure it was a little scary and hurt when he came out. So my aunt and I, there's even a picture of us just looking at each other, strategizing, being like, probably discussing, like, you better on 2, bend your legs, and then on 3, you better take off and dive out like a bird. So I will show you the picture that they took of us when we finally took our jump. So there's the middle area over here that you stand, your tippy toes are hanging off of the ledge, and they count to 3, you do the whole thing. Meanwhile, let me tell you that there's a random guy holding the bungee rope somewhere to the side, because once you jump off, he lets go of it. And this guy up here that was standing behind us, who was doing the counting, actually almost pushes you out a bit as well. So you can see his hand kind of being like, you're ready to go. And you see my aunt and I, we're overachievers. We practiced really well. We look like birds flying through there. So this was a scary experience. And turns out this is not the first scary experience that I will have in my life, because there's one more bungee jump. And this bungee jump was a little different this time, as you can tell by the photo. This time they didn't tie our legs together. So that means I have a choice. I can almost run away. When the guy starts counting, I can walk back. I'm not tied to someone at my feet. So we're still going tandem. We have to kind of commit. I think they did link us together, but we have to commit and hug each other. And what happens is now they put the rope on the front of you. And the rope is actually, you're standing over the ledge again, over here, on the metal ledge. Your tippy toes are hanging off this ledge. And this one was actually way harder than flying out as a bird. You think flying out as a bird, oh my God, I'd never be able to do it. In the heat of the moment, they count to 3, you just go. But when somebody tells you, hey, put your feet over this ledge hanging off and have one leg dangling forward, and on 3, you're going to meet your other leg. It's not that easy. So this was actually one of the scariest ones out of the jumps. And the rope is super heavy. So once you get to that ledge and you're hanging off, the rope's already pulling you forward. So the guy in the back is actually almost holding you back so you don't fall ahead of time. So both of these experiences were really scary. They were risky. I literally risked my life on this bungee rope. But I feel even if you haven't been to South Africa, and even if you haven't, or you're not planning on bungee jumping off of the Victoria Falls, you experience you're experiencing these things every day. So I experience risk all the time. So for example, signing up for this event. This is risky, this is a scary situation, I'm taking a risk to be up here. Last year I had a friend offer me a speaking position at a conference. She said, just apply for this conference and see what you get. And I applied, and they came back with an hour and 10-minute workshop in front of a bunch of professionals I haven't presented to before. And that's a scary situation, getting on stage in front of that, taking that risk, plunging yourself in there. So it's important to do things and to have experiences that are a little scary, because those are the experiences that I've noticed are the best. Those are the experiences that you usually can draw the most meaning from, and those are the experiences that are going to help build you and what you want to do and who you are. And being meaningful, as I said, is about taking risk, and it's also about seeking opportunities, because these scary experiences are not going to just come to you. Nobody's going to come to you on a platter and be like, here, would you like to choose from these experiences? Today we have, all these different bungee jumps that you can do, and tomorrow you can start your own business, and the next day you can, create something innovative and be the new Apple. That's not going to happen. Nobody's going to come to you and ask you for those things. You have to seek those opportunities out, and you have to seek those experiences for yourself. Shortly after this trip, in 2010, I found out that I was not accepted to the PhD program that I wanted to attend. And this was kind of hard, because I kind of planned my life around this PhD program that I applied to. I wanted to stay in Tampa. I already had plans to keep working at the Leadership Institute where I worked. I already had plans seeking other opportunities in town. I was networking with a lot of folks, and I just wanted to stay here. It was very familiar. It was comfortable. That was the thing that I wanted to do. So when I did not get into the PhD program, I had to make a choice, and now I had to take a risk. And I took a risk, and I accepted an offer from University of West Florida and went to their master's program instead in Pensacola. And their master's program is valued because they pride themselves on applied experience. And I'm all about applied experience. I love going to school and going to work at the same time. So this was perfect for me. I'm like, okay, graduate school, and I get to do projects at real organizations and work at the same time as going to school. And I took the risk, and I moved there. And at first I was comfortable. I went to school just like everybody else did. I always take full load of credit of classes because I want to get out of there as soon as possible. So I'm going to take all the classes. I received a graduate assistantship, so I helped a professor teach a class, and so I got paid and had some hours with that, but I wasn't satisfied. So I volunteered for a few committees, and I became a vice president here, and something else there, and I did some extracurricular work at these professional organizations and networked, but I needed another risk. Something else was missing, and this internship came up. And it was actually an internship not for me, and not for people like me. It was not for people who just started the graduate program. It was for seniors. It was for people who were looking at full-time internship as a senior who needed those credits to graduate. It was an internship that was full-time, so you had to be there and committed every day. So it was definitely not for someone like me who just started out into the program, who's taking a full class load, who's also a graduate assistant. So I asked some of my friends, I said, are you going to apply for this internship? And they said, no, I have all these things going on. I have 4 classes, I'm also a graduate assistant, and they're not going to accept us. They're looking for all the people who are, already have the experience already. They're getting ready to graduate. So I applied. And I got a call back. It's like a show. So I got a call back from them, and they asked me to come in for an interview. And because I have worked before while going to school, I had some experience on my resume, and they were willing to meet me and hear me out. So I met with a panel of 4 people who interviewed me and asked me various questions. And, the interview went well, and they let me go. And I didn't really know what was going to happen. I just put myself out there. I didn't know if they were going to think I'm crazy and be like, she knows this is a full-time position. I don't know why she's looking for that. She's going to be part-time. We need somebody who's here. So what actually happened is they called me back and they created a position for me. So they didn't know that they needed me. And they didn't know that they wanted to create a position for someone. So it took me applying for that position and going out on a limb and taking a risk and seeking an opportunity for myself and seeing if they would take me in. And they did, and it was one of the best positions I ever held. I held it throughout the entire time I was at Pensacola, right before I moved back here to do my internship here in town. I learned a lot. They actually did hire another intern as well, who's full-time. He became a really good friend of mine. And he completed the internship that they originally created, that he applied for. And then they created a separate part-time position for me. And we got to work together and work on change initiatives in that organization. Now, the peers that I had who did not apply for this position, they didn't get to experience the same thing I did. They didn't get that opportunity. You have to seek for those opportunities. People are not going to seek you out and say, do you want a part-time position at this organization that's not posted anywhere? So that being meaningful is really about doing things. It's not about sitting on the couch. It's about experiencing, and it's about doing things that will bring meaning to your life and help you define what you want to be. In 2011, I went to Dominican Republic with a good friend of mine. And at this, we went to, her sister was graduating from high school. And in Dominican Republic, when you graduate from high school, there's a huge kind of gala ball. And then for the weekend, they go to an all-inclusive resort with the family and friends. It's a whole family event, and everybody goes and has fun. So we went to Punta Cana, and we went on the beach to an all-inclusive resort. Everybody's going to the pool, everybody's going to the beach, they're boating, swimming. There's a couple disco places at the resort at the end. It's a lot of fun. But the one thing that they had that stood out from any other resort that I've ever been to is a trapeze. So has anyone here ever been on a trapeze in their life? There's one person. 2? Wow, that's great. So this was my first time on a trapeze. And the way that this was laid out was it was a net, that catches you. And then they had this little tiny set of stairs. And you climb up, they put the harness on you, but they don't hook you up yet. They're going to hook you up when you get to the top of the stairs. And if you think that you're not afraid of heights, when you climb up a tiny set of stairs with a harness but no rope, that starts shaking towards the end when you get up there because it's thinning out and it's so tall, you realize that you are afraid of heights. And so you get up there and there's this little wooden plank. And this plank, you're actually sharing with somebody else. It's going to be the guy who's going to hook you up. So you're standing up there on a little plank, and the whole thing is shaking. They hook you up, and they bring the bar to you that you're going to trapeze with. And so they bring the bar to you, and what actually happens is you, again, have to lean off of this little platform, grab the bar, and lean out, and almost be parallel to the ground. So you're not really off yet. You're like this. You're still holding on, but your tippy toes are your tippy toes on the platform, which means you can't really climb back with your tippy toes when your arms are out, and you can't really go anywhere. So you have a couple choices. You can try to beg the guy and be like, "Catch me! Like, pull me back! I don't want to do this anymore." Or you can let go of the bar and fall into the net, which I don't recommend. Because although the net looks safe, it actually hurts pretty bad because it's an actual rope material that's there. It's just there to catch, probably cell phones or some hats or something. And then the other choice that you have is actually to go ahead and do the trapeze, and you can swing and wait for it to stop and just jump off and get off as fast as you can and say, "Never mind, I never want to do that again." Or you can do what they ask you to do, which is swing, and then put your legs over the bar, hang off, act like you don't care, and then put your hands back on, jump off, and do a flip off the net thing as well. They had this whole thing established for you to do. But the point of that story is when you're on the trapeze of your life, and you're standing on a little wooden plank, and somebody gives you that bar, and you've committed, and you grab that bar, and you're leaning parallel to the ground, at that point, you've reached the point of no return. You have made a decision. You've already made a choice. You've committed. When I came out here today, I couldn't just walk back, nobody saw me, I'm just going to walk back. My photo's already on the brochure. My name is already on there, my bio, the presentation I'm going to do. I can't back out. So I've reached the point of no return. And we reach those moments in our life. And in those moments, we have a couple of choices. You can go ahead and do the best we can and get off and say, never mind, let's point, I never want to reach again. Or, we can try to do the best we can be successful at it, and we can learn something from it, we can open our new startup, we can create a new business, we can create an innovative product, we can become a singer, we can, go to Africa and hang out with the animals. We can do all those things and the dreams that we had in the beginning. So meaningful, and being meaningful in many aspects of your life, is all about, taking risks, just like what I talked about. It's about seeking opportunities, because those opportunities are not going to just come to you. And it's about moving forward. The number one worst thing that I feel like I can do is be in the same place next year. If I'm not moving forward, then I'm not learning, I'm not experiencing, and I'm not being meaningful. So in 1999, my family took a risk. My family stepped into the unknown. My parents got my brother and I, and we moved to the United States from Russia. We said goodbye to our friends. We said goodbye to our family. My brother and I left our schools. We left our house there. We left our grandparents there and other family. We left our cat there. I was super upset. I love my cat. So we left my cat with my grandparents, and we left all of the things that we're familiar with. We left all of the things that were known, and we moved to the United States. We stepped into the unknown. And when we moved here, we reached the point of no return. So now you can either be successful or you can fail. And because my parents were not afraid to step into the unknown and take that risk, is why I'm here today and I'm able to share my experiences with you. So when you leave here today, you have a choice. What experiences are you going to seek moving forward? Thank you.
Well, we've had a great evening. Vance gave us a spark, and Laura gave us choices and squirrels. And Indra talked to us about simplicity and being personal and attitude. And Vera talked to us about meaningfulness. So it's been a great night so far. I'd like to ask our 4 coaches to join me on the stage. And we'd like to give you an opportunity to have a very short Q&A, because I don't know about you, but there's cold beer within walking distance in this theater. And I'm thirsty. And Laura, you want to join us? Indra? And I'm going to circulate, and if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll talk to you about any of the things that, any of the topics that came through this evening, or anything you'd like to know about coaching or about us. So, anyone have any questions this evening? We have a question right here.
So, the concept of simplicity, you held up as a good thing. And I know from my own personal experience that simplicity is very hard to get to. You have to get really complex before you can get simple. So how do you coach people to really zero in on that simplicity?
The question was, how do you coach people to find simplicity?
You ask a lot of questions. That's the first step, because you're trying to, number one, understand what their objectives are a little better. And number two, you're trying to coach them to ask themselves those questions, because they'll be asking themselves these questions forever. That's how you retain simplicity. Simplicity is not a one-time deal. You've got to really focus on getting to that very essence of what you want to accomplish. And it's a discipline. I believe it's a discipline. It's almost a religion, if you ever get to it. I've seen people get to it, but it's hard. The way you start coaching them is by asking questions and showing them how to ask themselves questions, how to ask other people questions that relate to them, to their business, or to their life. So it's just a lot of interaction and eventually teaching them the tools or coaching them and showing them the tools of how to get to it. There is no easy answer to it.
There's not a 1, 2, 3 here.
No, I wish there was. I could write a book
That's what
about
I
it. No, unfortunately, clarity is different for every person, every business is different.
We had another question. I saw another hand. Anyone? Yes, ma'am. Speak loudly, please.
Oh, I love that you said your experiences don't just come to you. You don't come to your door and knock and say, hey, do you want to go and have this magical experience? What I want to know, since you have this amazing collection of experiences, is how do you conquer your resistance? What is it that gives you the courage to step outside of your door and say, I may not know where this opportunity is coming from, but I'm going to create it for myself?
So the question is, how do you conquer resistance and how do you overcome your fear? She nodded yes. Who would like to take that?
Great question. Yeah, I think a lot of the time the decision that I've made have been really hard for me. So, the South Africa example and going to trapeze, those are kind of those fun experiences and moments where you go on a limb and you take a risk and you experience something that could be extraordinary and meaningful. And then outside of that, in a professional setting, the experience that I seek is, making bold moves recently, and making calculated risks as well. So just like that guy in South Africa who dove head first and just went in and didn't do what he was instructed to do, and it kind of hurt. Sometimes you have to take a step back and you have to do what my aunt and I did, and we practiced a bit and we rehearsed what we were going to do when we were going to jump off because it needed to be great. And so a year and a half ago, I worked for a leadership institute, and I left that position to start a brand new position in a completely different field at a startup company. And that was a complete shift in what I have been used to in doing, and a complete risk. And to be honest, when I took that position, I was excited about the opportunity and just about the people that I met. But I don't believe that I could have foreseen the future and still being there in a year and a half later. After a couple months, it could have been a dump, and I could have left and would have not been successful, and I would have had to beg my way back to the position that I left. But it's the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen, and I think to overcome that fear, sometimes you have to talk to people. You have to ask others questions and see what they think you should do. Maybe people who are close to you, but then also think back and listen to yourself first and see, do I want to take on this opportunity even if it doesn't work out? So if it doesn't work out the way I think, will I still be happy that I took this opportunity? Could be a question.
I would just add to that, there's a great book, it's an old book, but it's a classic. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's a thin little book. You can knock it off in a weekend. It's fabulous. The other thing I do with my clients is I say, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And we play that out. We play that out in our minds. What's the worst case scenario? Okay, it doesn't work out. You have to take your job back. You should cancel. And then you look at the worst case scenario and you go, I can handle that. I can handle that. And then you forget about the worst case scenario because it's not going to happen. And you plan for the best case scenario. Okay?
Let me add a little final thing about that. I don't have a mic. I don't think I need one.
I'll just paraphrase everything you said.
Certainly Jane will tell you I don't need a mic to be heard. Resistance lives in the lizard. It's in that part of the amygdala that says, stay in the middle of the herd. Don't get near the edge. It's only the weak ones and the stupid ones that get out there. Just run with the flow. If you've ever seen a group of gazelles running on it, there's always one that doesn't quite make it, otherwise nobody be filming it. Because running gazelles aren't funny. People are watching it because they know that little skinny one that's on the end is going to end up with somebody's dinner. Now, the beauty of resistance is that's what it does to you. It wants you to stay in the center. It doesn't want you to step out there. There's a great book by Stephen Pressfield, who just happened to be the screenwriter in a great movie called The Legend of Bagger Vance, which it was a setting of golf and had nothing to do with golf. Quite frankly, it had to do with overcoming resistance.
what you have to do. We're standing in the result of Andrea and a group of people doing the work, not just sitting around and counting out how many ways that this would not be possible to have their own independent house, to be doing theater work here, have the freedom to do the kind of work that they wanted to do. And all of a sudden we're here. And they celebrated their 30th birthday as a theater. And how long have you been here?
2 years.
2 years. My lovely wife up there was in this very spot on this dirt floor. And so that's how you overcome resistance. You do the work. Light the spark, you feed it the right flame, you give it a little fuel, and you keep going no matter what. You lean out. You step off the falls.
You lean on the trapeze.
You think. You take that moment that Laura talked about. And if you're in business, the very first thing, see, it's easy for me to simple because if I get too complicated, I get lost. But it's very simple to focus when you got no other option. When everybody has sat down and said, holy smoke, we're about to land on dry land with no wind. That's the time that you have to do that. Creative people, the people that are out there, that build that fire, that step off of those things, that do the work, always are successful. We just never hear about them because we're so busy listening to all the stories about the ones that failed. Or we're so busy telling you, don't try that, you know, that's a little weird. Don't be booking yourself to fly onto a foreign country. Or wait a minute, don't be out there trying to up your numbers. You know, you're getting a little bit outside what's normal here. You're making the other sales guys look bad. Or nobody likes this job. The person before it did a holy terror of a job, and we're not going to give you any more resources. Just fix it. You do the work. That's how you overcome resistance.
We've got time for one more question. Well, we've got two hands. We got a hand here and a hand here. We're going to do this gentleman first because I've got the mic. What's your question?
This may take things to a little different spin, but I'm sort of a lifelong scholar of self-motivation. And one problem that I have is consistency. Like I can do all these things and do them okay for a period of time. Whoever wants to take this question, what's your take on how to be consistent?
Great question.
I think consistency, you want to reframe it, that's what we do as coaches, is reframe consistency. Consistency is being true to yourself every day of the week. It's not doing the same thing every day of the week, but it's being true to who you are. So if you want to be brave, bravery every day of the week. If you want to be courageous, courage every day of the week. If you want to be loving, love every day of the week. And you get to define what that looks like. I think sometimes we get into sort of that guru state where, you know, I read this book and I got to do an affirmation every day, or I've got to, you know, do something. I'm not so worried about what my clients do. I really want them to think about how they're expressing themselves. How are they being? And going back to the values and who you want to be and how you want to show up, and being very clear about who you are as a person and who you want to be as a person. I think it's really important. And then how do you express that? It's going to be different every day. And you're going to have opportunities, like Vera's talking about, ways to express it that you just don't even know is going to happen. But when you leave yourself open to that and who you are as a person, those opportunities will be there for you. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
No, I just want beer.
All right, hold that thought. We have a gentleman here.
I'm sorry to keep you.
Oh, that's all right.
It's okay. Last person has to buy. All right, one more over here.
I love the idea about the spark that you talked about and using the Stampos as the example. That was pretty amazing. But my question is there too much spark? My life is a history of taking risks, but I find myself in a unique position. I love my job, I'm good at my job, and it's still not enough. So I'm looking for the next thing, but is that a flaw?
No. See how easy that was?
That would be $100.
No, yeah, that would be 300. No, it's not. There's no fault in the process of realizing that there's still something else out there for you. There's no fault in realizing that because you're paying attention to what's coming your way, and that interest will land there. The danger in that is worrying that you're never going to be satisfied, because that burns your head energy at about 3 times the glowing rate of being creative and opening stuff up. And it sounds to me like you've taken risk and you've landed somewhere where you're really happy. Now, I want you to think to yourself and ask yourself this question, just don't answer it here. Ask yourself this question: how did I get here? Would I have been here without taking the risk and developing the experience and doing the things that were there? Sometimes you can talk yourself into being unsettled. I do it all the time. I don't have enough clients. I need to be doing this. I need to be doing that. And then all of a sudden it just comes to me, well, then do it, idiot. Just get up. It's the same thing as Stephen 2 days ago, where he was not going to not be a star. Now, the other half of that story is everybody in that place understood. I'll tell you one of my other great sparks, and it's in Boston as well. During the marathon, at the end of the marathon, when 2 crazy people set off bombs, did you realize that for every one person that was backing up and or walking away, there were 4 that were running to help? That shows we've turned a corner. That shows we're a connected community. And that's why I will never bitch about another Boston fan as long as I live. Because that's the way it works. That's the way it works. And from the standpoint of constantly asking yourself, have I done enough? Am I there enough? That's a healthy mindset. What do I want to do next? Is why I'm looking at my Social Security check as venture capital. The way it works. No more rocking chair money for me. We got one more?
We have one more burning question. And we are going to do a networking session after this, so you're all invited to the poorhouse. There's going to be some discounted drinking.
Yes.
Is there any last burning questions that we have? All right, I'm going to spend, I promise, 2 minutes closing. I'd like to join our coaches up here. First, I want to thank our coaches. I'd like to give them another round of applause. We've been working on this for many, many months, and this is the first of what we hope to be many. And we hope that it's also going to be part of what ICF will be bringing to the community in the next few years. We hope to do more this year, coming year. I'd like to remind you all of our sponsors again. We're going to be joining everyone at the Poorhouse. We want to thank the Poorhouse for hosting us this evening in our networking session. We want to thank ICF Tampa Bay Charter Chapter for their support. We want to thank Craft Tech for their support. Where's our Craft Tech ladies? Thank you, Craft Tech. We, of course, want to thank Ice Code Productions for doing our video this evening, and the folks from, where's our still photographer?
There he is. The best photographer in the whole place.
Thank you. I also want to thank Stageworks. This has been a very special evening. We would have never expected to have such a fine setting if it wasn't for Vance and his lovely wife. This, by the way, is Vance's concept. And I want to personally thank Vance, as well as the other coaches, but Vance brought this to all of us and said, you want to try this crazy program? And we all looked at each other and said, can we? Yeah. And I had a stroke and I had a heart attack. Look, we didn't anticipate having an audience this large. We really are delighted that you're here this evening. Finally, is Marjorie Paul here?
I'm back here.
Stand up.
Stand up, Mark.
She did all of our graphics. Indra's wife.
And now I'm going to take over the program for the last time. Andy, stand up. This is Andrew. Andrew is one of the biggest sponsors of this because he owns a poorhouse. Hey, when's the last time you saw a 25-year-old guy and his somewhat literate brother who knows everything about sports be so successful? And when I say, can you help us out? No problem. What do you need? So please enjoy yourself over there. Thank you for everybody that stepped up. Right across, we try not to be more, coaches are funny about being that far away from fuel. Right? I live 7 floors up. Yeah. We're good. Okay. Now, I do have an announcement to make. Through your generosity, through the generosity of all of the folks that have stepped up, and this is without all the accounting, Andrea, we're going to be able to give you a check for about $600 from the ICF to help support the education program.
About Stageworks. You may not know about Stageworks. They're an awesome theater. They do amazing productions. If you've ever been here, you know I'm speaking the truth. What you may not know about what Stageworks does is they also do a program, an outreach program for at-risk children. And this is what this money is going to today. And we are so grateful and honored that you're able to step out of your comfort zone and into the community and help at-risk kids. So thank you so much.
Thank you.